Got a question on TikTok about if a landlord is supposed to give you a relocation fee if they give you a 60-day notice to vacate because they're going to sell the property. Hi, my name is Rob Wells. I'm the Landlord Warrior on TikTok and YouTube. Please feel free to like, share, and subscribe to our videos. Now, your mileage is going to vary, okay, because it depends on where the property is located at, because your property might be subject to state Tenants Protection Act, or it might be subject to localized eviction control with your if your city has passed an ordinance about regulating evictions that are greater than state law protections. And the question might differ too if you're exempt from either the local ordinance or the Tenants Protection Act. Okay, so I'll start with if you're fully exempt under the Tenants Protection Act or local eviction ordinance. Okay, generally, no, you won't have to provide 1 month's worth of move out assistance. Okay, the common exemption under the Tenants Protection Act for landlords is landlords that own single dwellings, single family homes, condos, properties that have one dwelling with a properly executed Tenant Protection Act exemption. Okay, that exemption, or the Tenants Protection Act, for that exemption, you have to opt in. You have to have a special statutory disclosure in your lease if your lease was entered in on or after July 1, 2020, or the landlord had to give you a written notice that the property is exempt. Okay, for those tenancies, landlord does not have to provide move out assistance. Okay, but let's talk about our landlords subject to the Tenants Protection Act. They, for example, like the most common ground for termination of tenancy for sale of a property is not like actually in the Tenants Protection Act, but a lot of people use it if they're selling the property and exiting the rental market, is withdrawing the property off the residential rental market. Okay, you see this with a lot of owners that are like liquidating their portfolios out of California. They're moving on. Okay, or I got a lot of clients that are elderly. They're just, they've been managing property for years and now it's getting difficult and they're just like, I need to sell that particular piece of property, that type of deal. So they'll issue a 60-day notice to withdraw that particular property off the residential rental market, especially if it's like a single family home, that type of deal. It's like you have to, under that type of termination tenancy, you have to withdraw all the rental units. So like, if it's like a duplex, that type of deal, you have to take every one of them off. That's kind of where it can kind of get tricky, okay? Because, you might have issues in court, but let's say it's a valid type of termination of tenancy, okay? Under Tenants Protection Act, the state requires at least 1 month's worth of move-out assistance, okay, to be provided. Either you got to write a check within 15 days after you give the 60-day notice, or you have to waive last month's rent. Those are the only options under the Tenants Protection Act. The other situation would be a local eviction ordinance. Okay, now I've looked at a couple of them. Most don't have a provision about like selling your property. Okay, I think there's like very few that may allow a landlord to kind of do that. But even if they do, for example, the local ordinance can require that for like a no-fault eviction like this, that the landlord provide more rental assistance greater than the Tenants Protection Act. And you usually see like things like 2 months worth of rent plus, like some moving expenses. It just depends on the ordinance. Okay, so your mileage is going to vary based on where the property is at and what you have to comply with. Okay, landlords, if you're contemplating doing a termination of tenancy for a sale of a property, it might be a good idea to talk with Landlord's Counsel and just get advice on like what your options are, that type of deal, because you may be facing a local eviction ordinance that you don't know about. I've talked with several people in the last couple of weeks here. They didn't even know they had an eviction ordinance in effect. So you need to tread lightly before issuing the notice, because you might have wasted your time. You might have even, gotten letters from tenants' attorneys telling you, hey, this is a bad termination. I need you to revoke the notice, etc. here. So if you're in the Northern California area, you need help out, feel free to reach out. We might be able to help out. Put your comments, questions down below. Until next time, folks, I'll talk to you then. Thanks.